Today, we're getting into new introductions and breaking down what Season 2 is going to look like. That's what we're talking about in this episode of Sounds Profitable with me, Bryan Barletta.
And me, Arielle Nissenblatt.
This episode is brought to you by Podsights, Podcast Attribution. Go to podsights.com for more information. This episode is sponsored by Artsci, AI personalization for results-oriented marketers. Find out more at artsci.com. We can start with the awkward hellos. Hi.
Okay.
How you doing?
Hey, Bryan. How are you?
I'm good. Arielle, I'm so excited to have you here. I really think that today in this episode, we're going to figure out what Season 2 of Sounds Profitable is.
Yeah, and what it means to record a podcast together remotely about podcast ad tech. Let's do it.
Yeah. The biggest thing to explain is who you are. Everybody listening hopefully knows who I am. Some of them know you from Rel's Rex on the newsletter, but who are you? Why are you here?
Yeah, that's a great question. My name is Arielle Nissenblatt, and I am the community manager at Squadcast. That's my full-time gig. I am also the founder of Earbuds Podcast Collective, which is a weekly podcast recommendation newsletter that sends a weekly email with a theme and 5 podcast episodes on that theme. I have been in the podcast space for approximately 5 years. I started out just being a listener, not really thinking critically about the industry. I didn't really know about the term, the industry, or about the podcasting landscape or anything like that. But I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and it quickly occurred to me that there was something going on here, and I really wanted to be a part of it, and I would do whatever it took to be a part of it. So starting Earbuds Podcast Collective was really my entry into the game. And ever since that, I have worked really hard to be in all aspects of this space. And my latest within the podcast space that I've made an entry into is podcast ad tech, thanks to Bryan Barletta. And it has been such a blast to learn about this space.
Yeah, you're everywhere, right? Like we met simply because you are all over the place in the communities around podcasting. And I just loved consuming your stuff because you take these topics that people were already talking about and break them down in a more fun way or a more approachable way or an engaging way. You'd play fun on the things like I like to do that just are goofy in the space, but you get people excited, right? You're not here to trash on anything. You're not here necessarily to sell anything.
Except for Joe Rogan.
Except for Joe Rogan, who deserves it.
Yeah.
We all got to have one enemy in the space. You did such a good job at it. And I reached out to you. We'd been talking for a while. And I said, I hate social media. Like it's just so overwhelming to me. And I know that there are people who subscribe to Sounds Profitable that don't have a chance to read it, right? I would love everybody to read it. That's why we're making the newsletter and the narrated articles. That's why we're going to have it in Spanish soon. And we can talk about that a little bit. But more than anything, people just need to find information in ways that are accessible to them. And you're really good at making complex things bite-sized.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's your threads in Twitter. If you guys haven't watched or if you haven't seen the Twitter threads for Sounds Profitable, for Squadcast, for Earbuds, or even checked out what Evo and James have been doing with podcast pontifications or Podnews because they've seen the success that Arielle's done with it. She breaks it down into pieces that are worth sharing, that are valuable on their own, and people can learn from in little bites and then decide how much more they want to take. And with Sounds Profitable trying to be about educating everybody on how this stuff works, it's real easy for me to get way too in the weeds. And I've tried numerous times to just say to somebody, here's my article, break it down and make it make sense. And they've fallen short. And, I passed it over to you and I read the first thread and
I'll say what you said.
Well, let's hear it.
You read the first thread that I did, and then you DM'd me on Slack and you were like, I hate this, but I understand that it's necessary.
I've never felt so old when I was just like, is this what the kids like these days?
Oh, God.
But it worked. It's super effective. We get great engagement. We get people excited about sharing it because that's the whole point. I could sit down and explain any of these topics, but if it's not digestible in the format that people need, it doesn't matter because I'm not selling anything. If I was, my funnel probably isn't great. I'm trying to provide information that people want to share to prove their points.
Yeah.
And you do that. You distill it down even further.
Yeah. And the people want it. The people often share the Tuesday article for Sounds Profitable on social media before I'm able to get to social media to do that. And that is really validating to know that, I think the worst thing you can do as a podcaster or as somebody who's trying to build a presence for your brand on social media is to put things out and not have it be engaged with or consumed in some way. It is the worst. Like you can see there's so many brands out there that are putting out content that are linking to things that get no traction at all. And it is awesome for me to come to Twitter every Tuesday. And before I can even go to post, Cabana has tweeted at us. Market Insights has tweeted at us. A bunch of people, a bunch of brands have tweeted at us that they appreciate the article, that they got something new from it. And that just makes me want to keep doing it. Makes me want to keep breaking it down and giving people another outlet in order to share it. Because yes, they can read it, but that's in a silo. Here they can share and give their own opinion.
Yeah, it makes me really happy to see that, the way that people sharing it, because I'm trying to provide that neutral view that people can layer their own pitch on, right? Like, here's a great example of how this works. Here's why we're the best at it. Content creation isn't easy. Education isn't easy. I want to be that backbone, and seeing people share it. Cabana is fantastic. Everybody should learn from how to share articles like them, because they're our number one cheerleader. It's just so fun. And I'm so focused on breaking down the concepts and just putting it out that sometimes I forget the finesse that's involved in making it palatable.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of bullet points or of blank space on a page in order to be able to read. I think I'm not a big reader. I will be very honest. I have not finished a book since 2019, I think. Maybe audiobooks since then, but it has been a very long time. It's all podcasts for me all the time. And I have an anecdote to support this and how it is useful, and I'll share that in a moment. But the point is, what I do read are very easy to read articles that break down for me what I'm going to get here. And then once it's finished, what I've learned from this. And I like to be able to say back to myself, here is what I got from reading this article, because or else kind of feel like I didn't absorb it. So that's what I'm working to do with these threads and on this podcast in order to help people understand what goes on and sounds profitable.
Let's hear that anecdote.
Yeah. So the other day I was hanging out with my friend and he was like, do you know how to pronounce the White House press secretary's name? And I was like, yeah, Psaki. It's Jen Psaki. And he was like, oh, okay. Because I've just been reading it. So I read it as Psaki. And I was like, well, I've only listened to it. So
I know that life from audiobooks. Yeah. There's been a few times that I've looked at a book afterwards and I was like, that is not how I would have pictured that spelled.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So the podcast, right? The format has been, I pick an old article. I find someone who is amazingly intelligent on the topic, and I try and show you how passionate they are and ask them a few questions to extend the content and the concept. And then we end it, right? Like we crammed it full of ad text. Some of it didn't work. There's an episode we'll link to in the episode details where me, Ian, and Evo kind of talked about what did and didn't work. And that's great. But if you're not invested, it doesn't tee it up super great. We give you a quick sentence about like what the article was kind of about, and then we just go right into it. So the new format, do you want to walk us through like what your goals are with it?
Yeah, I love to be able to frame a conversation for both for myself and for other people. I'm a big fan of over communication in almost every aspect of life. I think be transparent as a podcaster, as a person, it'll help you in every aspect of your life. And I definitely want to bring that here to this podcast. So with that in mind, what we want to do is still, we're going to be choosing an old article or an older article that Bryan has written or somebody else has written for Sounds Profitable. And we're going to read that ahead of time. We're going to know everything that's going on there. And then before Bryan interviews the person who is well-versed in that topic, I am going to frame that conversation for you, the listener. Hello, listener. And I'm going to let you know what to listen for. And then Bryan's going to jump into the interview. You're going to listen to that. And then I'm going to pop back in and I'm going to ask any remaining questions or give my commentary or my analysis. And we hope that that'll add some context to the overall conversation that Bryan's having and that the impact that this conversation has and will continue having on the ad tech space. And
that's why I'm so excited, because there are people in this space who understand, who have the inputs ready to absorb exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm trying to empower them. But I'm also trying to make this accessible for the people who want to become them, who want to move into the industry, who or are already as an account manager or junior level role and want to evolve, or, think about joining this industry overall. And Arielle, you get podcasting. You get the creative side. You get this part where we're doing right now on the microphone way better than I do. You've done how many episodes?
You're getting there.
I appreciate it, but you've done way more episodes, way more guesting than I have. But you are exactly the 50% of the audience that I want to talk to. Someone who would be perfect to come work in the business side, someone whose new ideas could challenge everything, and someone who has the opportunity to learn it the right way and be educated the right way instead of the dangers of just learning it siloed from one company. So your questions and your analysis are either going to challenge what I'm writing in a way that I'm really excited about so that I can get better at what I'm creating and make sure that I'm answering and talking to all the audiences correctly. Or even more than that, it's going to help make sure that the people that you represent, that you can talk to best, their questions get answered.
Yeah. And I hope that folks who want to break into the podcast industry are listening to this. And if they're not, don't worry, I will target you with a great social media post, because so many people reach out to me every week and they say, I love podcasts. I listen to them all the time. How do I get to work in this space? And I say, follow this newsletter, follow that newsletter, get on this job board, get on that. This newsletter is giving you the information that you need in order to carve out a role for yourself within any company in the ad tech space, or even in the podcast industry in general that needs to know about ad tech. So listen to the show. It will help you. You will get a job.
I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that, like, 2 days with turning your email off and canceling your meetings and digging into these platforms, and you could go toe to toe with me on a lot of this stuff. The only thing I'll have an advantage on you is the list of things that I've personally screwed up that I've learned from over you, right? Just more time in it, but it's accessible and you can go get a job and you can still do your own podcast, but then you can work at a major company in the space because they need fresh talent. We're at a pivot point where we're starting to poach from each other at a point that is just not sustainable. And we need new people from other ad tech fields, from other business fields, from other creative mindsets. And the industry is rapidly growing. So this is a great thing. And then from there, advancement's very quick. I didn't finish college, right? I'm not an engineer, but I've been a product manager and a sales engineer my entire career, 13 plus years at this point, just because I was passionate about it. I fought to learn about it. And I asked to do more. Once I learned something, I asked, can that be part of my job? Can I take that role? And that's really what we're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah. And hopefully we can do that. And if we don't, if it's still inaccessible, we'd love to hear from you about how to make it more accessible.
So this season, which I guess launches in October, so not quite the year, we have a few surprises coming, and I want to just give you guys a little bit of heads up about it. The first is that we're working with Veritone and their Marvel AI product to release Sounds Profitable, the newsletter and the narrated articles in Spanish. So that's going to be, they created an AI version of my voice.
I was going to say, did you become fluent between last week and this
barely
week?
Barely speak English. And they created an AI version of my voice that we're going to use and disclose fully to speak Spanish. Like, they made my AI voice speak fluent Spanish. And
I've heard it. It's pretty good.
It's neat. And so we want to just try and be as accessible as possible. And we might try other languages later based on demand, but the newsletter will be in text in Spanish, and then the narrated articles will be audio version in Spanish. Eventually, we're going to have me and Arielle and our guests in Spanish too. But the trick there is that Ian's going to have to edit it in a way that he doesn't have to know how to speak Spanish. He's going to just know the beats of the episode to try and make sure that the conversation flows. So a little bit more work there.
And I think that's all in service of, number one, making the podcast more accessible, and so that as many people who want to consume this content can. And also because Bryan wants to show you the tools that are available to you as podcasters, as companies, as people in this space who want to know about all the tools and products that are out there. And that's just another one of them.
Yeah. And that's what's really exciting. I do think that if you can afford to do it, you should absolutely localize your content and not just translate it. And we'll get into that in the future. But for ad tech, it's really cool to just see how this works, right? To show the technology off and show you that it is available. The other area we're going to dig into is we're going to be on YouTube. You know, Tom Webster of Edison Research says how big YouTube's impact is in podcasting. So we're going to start recording the video version of this. We're going to work on that. Ian is going to go from being a podcast editor to a video editor as well. So no pressure there. And sometime before the end of the year, we're going to have this on YouTube as well. And we'd love to hear feedback on if you're going to consume it there, because it's the two of us, with our nice, cool office backgrounds, and then me and my interview guests. And we'll see how it works. We'll see if it's appealing, and we'll see if the Sounds Profitable audience exists on YouTube, or maybe that's for someone who's a little bit more generally entertaining. But I think it's worth being on more platforms.
I think so too. And I think as more and more people start to pay for YouTube Premium, I only learned recently that YouTube Premium allows you to close the
Turn
app,
the screen off.
yeah, and still be able to listen. I didn't realize that was a premium feature, but it is. So I think more and more people are going to start realizing the value of paying for subscriptions like that. And so YouTube may become another place that Sounds Profitable is consumed en masse.
Or YouTube realizes how powerful podcasting is, and that becomes a base feature you don't have to pay for.
It should be.
Well, Arielle, I'm so excited for this. We have so many more weeks ahead of us. And this was the focus here, was to introduce you to everyone and kind of set up what we're doing. So is there anything else you want to say to the lovely listener and before we move on?
Yes. Yeah. So a few things. Number one, Jake Crow creates incredible artwork for every single Sounds Profitable article that we do. And those are based off of Rels Recs. Those are the recommendations that I put in the newsletter every week. The artwork frames it's the headline image of every article, and they're amazing. And I want to make sure that people are seeing them and understanding that those are made by a person every time. And also that they lead right into a recommendation that I think you should check out, because I really work hard on those recommendations. I listen to, 40 hours plus of podcasts every single week. It's a full-time job. I do it on 2 times speed though. So it's really 20 hours. Still, it's a lot. And I listen to a lot, and I try to recommend the best podcasts out there. So please, if you do listen to them, let me know, and let me know what you think of those recommendations.
That's awesome. I'm a big fan. Jake and I went to college. The funny story is he didn't think we would be good friends because he accidentally spilled an entire bottle of water on top of my gaming computer. But we became really good friends. We lived together for a long time, and we always wanted to do like a web comic together. So I'm so happy to have his art there, and I'm so happy for you guys to collaborate, because I think they're such neat little ideas. And we're going to do stickers. We're going to do some merch related to it, just to kind of have something that shows off your tastes in podcasts, Arielle, and Jake's awesome artwork.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I'm thinking about the one that's coming up next week, and I'm excited for everybody to see it and then listen to the podcast that is accompanied by it.
Me too. Well, thank you again so much. And I'm so excited for us to kick this off the following week with our first interview and really show off how cool this format is and what the next season of Sounds Profitable is all about.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to see what the future holds. Before we wrap up, here's what's happening this week in the world of podcasting with James Cridland at Podnews.
This episode is sponsored by Megaphone, modern podcast technology for publishers and advertisers. Find out more at megaphone.fm.
If you want to connect with us, that's great, because we want to connect with you. Or if you have any questions or comments, you can feel free to reach out to us on social media. Our handles are SoundsProfNews, High Five RPG, or Ari This and That on Twitter. Podcast at soundsprofitable.com for email, or you can reach out to us via the Yappa link in the show's description.
Sounds Profitable is recorded using Squadcast. We use Squadcast at Sounds Profitable for the podcast and for our YouTube videos. And don't forget our product deep dives, which do screen shares and a lot of other great features to show about all the products in the podcast ad tech space. I highly recommend you go to squadcast.fm and sign up for a free trial, because everything is recorded and uploaded in real time, so there's no risk of losing anything in the process.
Check out our private feed, if you haven't already, on Supercast for access to narrated articles and early drops of the interview episodes. We have a link in the episode description.
Thanks to Evo, Terra, and Ian Powell for their help on this episode. We need a cool sign-off.
Oh, I got it. How about every week we say it in a different language?
Sure. Let's start with English this week.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. That was stupid.
Ian, use that whole thing.